This is Andrew with PowerCranks. I'm here with Rob Spinosa. So, Rob, how long have you been on PowerCranks?
I've been on PowerCranks now for about 3 years.
And what got you into PowerCranks?
I was competing at Ironmans and recognizing that my bike split was not sufficient to get me into Kona qualification, and I was probably giving up anywhere from 10 to 25 minutes to the other guys in the age group. And at those same Ironmans, Frank was there, Andrew was there with PowerCranks, and had the display out, and it looked like a good way to try and improve my power and certainly increase or quicken my bike split.
Do you remember your first ride and what it was like?
I remember it vividly. I was on the cranks for about well, the total session was about 15 minutes, but I would say the individual parts of that were no more than a couple of minutes. And then I ran off of it, and that wasn't fun either.
Yeah, but doing brick workouts, it's a fast way to get, usually a good way to get adapted quite fast. So what kind of methodology you use to get adapted to the PowerCranks? Did you do a lot of brick workouts, or did you just go?
Yeah, I do a lot of brick workouts. I think one of the other things that I really enjoy, well, don't enjoy it, but it's very effective, is that what I'll typically do is ride on the road bike or the tri bike out on the roads, and then I'll get on my trainer fitted with PowerCranks, and I'll do a shorter session on that and then run off of that. So instead of going out for a monster bike ride and then trying to run off that, go for a shorter bike ride, more focused, then onto the PowerCranks, again focused, and then a focused run, and that's a more effective use of my time. That's really what PowerCranks are all about for me. As an age grouper, you have limited time, you want to achieve certain results, and PowerCranks are a great way to do it.
So you've had your PowerCranks for about 3 years.
Yep.
Have you seen improvements for the past 3 years, or was it a major improvement year one, and now it's more like you maintaining what you've learned?
I would say it's a steady improvement with the typical improving and breaking a plateau and then improving again. But you get smarter at using them too, so I think that's one of the other great things about it. Is it's just an effective tool. When something becomes relatively easy, PowerCranks give you a good way to change that up and make it difficult again. So it's just a really, really effective training tool.
Speaking about being smart at using them, how did you change, for example, your workouts the first year you had them versus the second year versus now? What kind of changes have you made to your workouts? Are you using them in the same way?
Roughly in the same way, but I think the other thing that PowerCranks are good at is that you can really focus on specific aspects of your pedaling. So if you want to spin at 90 RPM on PowerCranks versus say 75, you get a totally different workout. So if you have 3 sessions a week on PowerCranks, they can be very different sessions, not only in the sense of the length of the session, but also how you approach them. And you're going to work different muscles, you're going to develop a different neural pattern, I think, with higher cadences, and that's all going to translate really well to a lot of your racing.
And running improvements, have you seen any running improvements?
My run splits have only gotten faster, and I think that any triathlete will tell you that running off the bike is different than running in an open race. And I think that one of the things that PowerCranks do especially well is, if you are using them, is they condition the hip flexors, which are essential for running. So a lot about Ironman running is not necessarily starting at a high pace, it's keeping a high pace. And I think PowerCranks condition the hip flexors to do that much better over the longer run.
Have you diminished the amount of time you spend running and complemented that instead with PowerCranks? How has your running changed, your running workouts?
I haven't diminished my run workouts as much as maybe some of the other guys have, but I would say that the translation is very good. So if you have a longer bike ride or a longer PowerCrank session, you don't need to run as long off of that, because you're going to accomplish the same thing with less mileage. And I think that's also important for an overall training plan, because if you have limited time and you are avoiding injury or burnout, PowerCranks give you a way to train running muscles, unlike going out there and running, and it gets the stress off your joints, and that can be beneficial over a long training period as well.
And on average, how many times a week do you work out on PowerCranks?
I would say 2 to 3 at least every week.
And do you still do brick workouts?
Absolutely. Yeah, brick workouts, but not I think one of the most ineffective brick workouts is the long bike short run. And one of the things that I found was very effective for me was that PowerCranks gave me a way to not bike as long, so better use of my time, but still pre-fatigue the legs to give the feeling that you're going to get in an Ironman race. So when you come off the cranks, instead of it feeling like you've been on the bike for 4 or 5 hours, you've maybe only been on for 2 hours, and now you go out and do your run, and in 4 or 5 hours total, you get the workout that you would have otherwise gotten in 6 or 7.
This year you called me or you called me right after your great result in Utah, thanking me for the PowerCranks. Granted, you did all the work. How did you prepare for the race this year differently from other years? Did you prepare differently, or did you use kind of the same MO?
I would say this year was different. Utah was in anticipation of a difficult bike course, but also relatively early in the season. I didn't have the luxury this year of being able to ride outdoors a lot. I also had shoulder surgery in December, so I was afraid to go out and ride the bike on wet pavement for fear of falling and re-injuring my shoulder. So I was almost exclusively inside, but I didn't have the time that I've had in previous seasons to work on it. So again, I mean, like you said earlier, how did I get more concise with my workouts? How did I make the time matter more? And that was all what it was about. And so I focused mainly on getting back up to form as quickly as possible with as short a sessions as possible. And I don't know of another tool that's going to permit you to do that on the bike. Usually it's a trade-off between a ton of miles or really effective training, and I just don't have the time to do a ton of miles.
And what was your result in Utah?
Utah, I was 9th in the male 40-44 age group, so I got a Kona spot there. I was 50th overall, and I think when you take out the DNFs, my bike split was in the 40s. So typically for me, now, having gone from, we started the interview talking about it, having gone from a very ordinary bike split, typically if I'm having a good race, I will be just behind the pros in terms of my time, and usually split in the top, almost always split in the top 50 overall bike times.
And between now and Kona, so we are August 10th, we are basically 2 months away.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to keep the same volume of PowerCranks training? You're going to diminish it? To any secrets that you might want to share?
I don't have any secrets. I'm not going to diminish the PowerCrank workouts. They're a mainstay. PowerCranks got me to Kona the first time in 2008. They got me back there, and I'm a one-trick pony. That's what I like doing in the sport. I try every year to get to Hawaii, and they're the way I've gotten there. I mean, I'm not historically I've not been a good swimmer, and I can run decently. But I make it up on the bike, and I make it up on the bike because I work hard on the PowerCranks.
Okay, so any word of advice for people who might be on the fence about spending what people think is a considerable amount of money on a heavy training tool?
It's you know what, I watch people do it day in and day out. I talk to people in the sport, friends, whatever. They'll go out and they'll drop $10,000 on a bike, and they'll save 1 or 2 minutes on their bike split. Maybe they'll save 1 or 2 minutes. But I tell them you can go spend, what it costs to outfit your bike with PowerCranks or your old bike with PowerCranks, and you will make that many times over, 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. I bet there are people out there that have saved an hour on their bike time if they use them properly. And it just depends on where you're starting from. But I believe, along with very few other things in the sport, it is probably one of the most effective, efficient uses of your training time. And I would recommend it highly to anyone.
Great. So we'll see you in Kona in about 2.5 months.
You got it. Looking
Thank
forward
you,
to it.
and thank you for your time.
Thanks, Andrew.